everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Woody brush encroachment is a major issue for landowners and producers across the southern Great Plains. But an extension team is now working across state lines to try to come up with some solutions. SUNUP's Curtis Hare is at OSU's Range Research Station to tell us more.
So the Prairie Project is a USDA-funded grant, and there's 4 collaborators across 4 different states. So we have Oklahoma State here, we have Texas A&M, University of Nebraska, and then we also have some collaborators in Kansas.
The project is a 5-year study into finding the best practices in controlling woody plant encroachment, whether it's wildlife habitat, water disruption, and land for grazing. The loss of grasslands negatively impacts the ecosystems of the southern Great Plains.
We know that in the southern Great Plains we're kind of losing the battle against woody plants coming into our grasslands. And so we're trying to look at different approaches to do that sustainably and economically.
Well, woody brush encroachment is a serious problem because we are losing an ecosystem. Literally, grasslands are disappearing from Oklahoma, from Texas, from the southern Great Plains and the entire Great Plains at alarming rates. It happens so quickly. You'll hear producers say, "I lost my pasture overnight."
Texas A&M Extension Rain Specialist and Prairie Project collaborator Morgan Treadwell says producers in Oklahoma and Texas face similar issues because many plant communities overlap.
The overlap in plant communities is also what makes this partnership and collaboration so powerful, because our ranchers and our producers are dealing with the same problems. And so when we can combine extension, outreach, education, and also the scientists from a research perspective, we stand a better chance.
Project collaborators, who are all in extension, are studying a 2-pronged controlling method: patch burning, followed by grazing cattle and goats together in the pasture.
Adding goats to herds, to existing cattle herds, and trying to see how we can use them to further the control that we get from fire. Grasses don't try to defend themselves from grazing, they just grow back really quickly. But broadleaf plants and woody plants defend themselves with different chemicals that they produce, and goats are uniquely adapted to being able to process those different chemicals that those plants create.
Goats, in my opinion, are an underutilized resource. They're kind of a little blessing in disguise and a diamond in the rough. They're very low maintenance. They add diversity to that grazing picture. So they're going to consume plant species that would not normally be consumed.
We know that cattle are drawn to areas that have been recently burned because of the really nutritious growth that comes back after fire. But we don't actually know how goats are going to respond to that. And so we've put GPS collars on our goats, on our cattle. In addition to the GPS research, we're also actually tracking what's happening with the woody plants that grow in these pastures.
The Prairie Project team isn't just testing this study on land owned by the universities. Local producers have volunteered their land and animals to the research.
We are working with ranchers and producers who are starting from ground zero. So they're experiencing all these growing pains of putting in goat-friendly fencing. That initial cost can be, a lot, especially when we start thinking about all the other challenges that ranchers and producers are already faced with.
The initial cost of introducing goats to an existing cattle operation is a hurdle. But with the growing goat industry, stopping woody plant encroachment might not be the only benefit. It could also positively affect a producer's bottom line.
You know, a lot of producers spend a fair amount of money on spray, chemical control. They may use fire or they may not. But goats, with their preferences for forage, are a natural way to control woody species in particular and some weed species. We anticipate it very likely will be a net benefit. So you may get the benefit of weed and brush control with the goats and at the same time add additional income to the overall operation with the addition of a goat enterprise to the cattle operation.
When you can introduce a win-win situation and scenario to a rancher and also increase their bottom line, their overall profit, that is what extension is all about. That's what our mission is. And we need to make sure that this research ends up in the hands of the folks that can use it and also and benefit from it and feed their families from it.
While there's only a few more years left in the grant, the Prairie Project team plans to continue this research well into the future. From the Rains Research Station in Payne County, I'm Curtis Hare.
Last week we visited with you on the Cow-Calf Corner about some of the preparations for the upcoming spring calving season. One more preparation I think that we should make is to have on hand some colostrum or colostrum replacer to give that baby calf that we had to assist during the calving process, one of those that perhaps it was a difficult pull and now that calf is sluggish. She's going to be slow to get up, slow to find the teat of a 2-year-old heifer, and perhaps won't get enough colostrum in him in time in order to get the passive immunity that he needs to have some disease protection as he perhaps is exposed to scours or even respiratory diseases later in life. To prepare for that situation, I would suggest that we find some actual colostrum. Perhaps we have a dairy in the area that we could go and visit and purchase from them some colostrum from freshened dairy cows that they can't put in the milk line anyway. And we could bring that home and freeze it, have it ready to go for that situation there in the middle of the night, in the middle of the winter, when we really want it to be available to us quickly. If we can get some of that fresh colostrum from either dairy or from a beef cow that we milk at home, I would suggest that we put it in one of these big resealable plastic bags, one of the big ones that contains more than a gallon, but only put about a quart of the colostrum in it. And then let's lay it flat when we put it in the freezer so that we have lots of surface area available to thaw out that colostrum when we're needing it so quickly. If we'll do that to where it's laying flat, rather than having a big 2-quart or larger glob of colostrum that's frozen solid, we can get this thawed out much more quickly. How much do we need to give that baby calf that needs some help? Well, the rule of thumb is 5 to 6% of his body weight in each feeding. That equates to about 2 quarts for an 80-pound baby calf, and we need to get that 2 quarts in him within the first 6 hours of life, and then repeat that feeding about 12 hours later. So we're going to need roughly a gallon of colostrum being available for any newborn that we think actually is going to need some help. The alternative is to go to your local veterinary supply store and purchase what's called a colostrum replacer. Look on the label to make sure that it has 100 grams of immunoglobulin per dose. And that way you've got the replacer. I'd say have a couple of these packages of replacer ready to go before the start of the calving season so that you can prepare them quickly and have them ready to feed that baby calf that needs some help. This is just one more part of getting prepared for that spring calving season, but it'll certainly help us to go ahead and get a few more calves through the first part of life and into weaning, so we got them available to sell next fall. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
We're talking about cover crops as a grazing option with Dr. Paul Beck, our extension beef specialist. Paul, if you could just set the stage for us for producers who may want to consider cover crops as part of their grazing management situation.
So the agronomists really talk a lot about the benefits of cover crops, and those are a growing crop in between cash crops in a cash cropping system for grain, and helping moisture retention and holding nutrients and keeping wind and water erosion from occurring in a field, because we have something green and growing holding that soil. But a lot of those cover crops that are chosen for their benefits to the soil can also make great cattle forage. This is a relatively simple combination of wheat and turnips. The turnips provide a lot of different benefits in a cover cropping system. Wheat, is a great ground cover in this system, but both of those are very high in protein and digestibility for lactating cow or a growing calf. The problem is that cattle that have been exposed previously to these will consume the tops, but early in the season, when these will grow really rapidly, put on a lot of forage early, they're high in these secondary compounds that have some side benefits, but will also are anti-quality compounds for cattle. They'll refuse to graze those unless it's the only thing there, and intake will be quite a bit lower when those compounds are high. Intake does increase whenever there's a freeze because the tops will increase in sugars, make them sweeter, and cattle that have been exposed in the past, and here's some turnips that we pulled out here that are quite large. Cattle will not only consume the tops, but they'll also consume the root crop part. These are high in sugar, very low in fiber, very low in protein as well, but cattle will get a lot of energy from consuming these, and they really like them once they're exposed to it.
You mentioned turnips and radishes. Are there some other crops that folks may want to take a look at?
So in these cover cropping systems, any of the cereal grains can be used in mixtures or monocultures. Oats are very common as a cover crop. Rye is a very common cover crop. Rye will grow as low as 36 degrees. So it's a very highly productive crop, and it'll grow later into the winter. So there's some advantages for some of these other cereal grains. They're in these mixtures. There's people using a lot of Austrian winter peas and other legumes, the clovers, red, white, arrowleaf, crimson clover. The problem with those is their growth habit is later on in the spring. So we're not going to see them right now. We're going to see them later on in the early spring, and they'll be most productive going into April. Livestock, if we're managing these right, can provide a lot of benefits in that cover cropping system. They're going to increase the turnover of the nutrients, make them more available to the soil in a quicker time frame, and also if we don't graze too tight and keep the right residue, we're not losing any of the benefits agronomically. There's just a lot of benefits in the high quality that we can get from these cover crops.
A great consideration. If folks want to learn more, is the best place to start maybe at their county extension office?
County extension office should have a huge amount of knowledge, both from the fact sheets and other bulletins that OSU has on the agronomy side and as well as on the animal side, on both cases.
It really has to be the right mixture of that knowledge coming in from both areas.
Absolutely right.
All right, Paul, great talking with you today.
Thank you very much.
And for a link to where you can find your local county extension office, go to sunup.okstate.edu.
Welcome to another edition of the Mesonet Weather Report. I'm Wes Lee. Most of this past week was characterized by unseasonably warm weather. The highs on Wednesday reached into the 70s for most of the state, or 20 degrees above normal. But the clear, calm nights allowed temperatures to drop quite a bit to more normal levels. In the wintertime, you often see maps of wind chills reported instead of actual temperatures. This gives us a better understanding of the felt temperature to humans outside. On Wednesday morning, the wind chill map shows some fairly cold temperatures, especially in the northwest and panhandle. Wind chill is simply calculated by taking the actual temperature and adjusting it based upon the wind speed. The higher the winds, then the lower the wind chill temperature. Technically, wind chills are only calculated when air temperatures are below 50 degrees. What about animals outside? What is their felt temperature? Well, the Oklahoma Cattle Comfort Index is our best tool available to determine that. This map is the minimum cattle comfort index for Wednesday. You will notice that it is slightly different than the wind chill for humans. The reason for that is that it utilizes a different set of weather variables to determine the index. Not only does it use air temperature and wind speed, it also includes relative humidity and solar radiation. Learn more about it at our Mesonet website. Now here's Gary to discuss more on Oklahoma's weather.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, as usual, we're going to start with the latest Drought Monitor report, see if we have any changes from that winter weather that we had last week and a bit of rain that came with it. Really not much change in the map at all. We still have the same basic picture, moderate to severe to extreme drought in parts of southwestern and west central Oklahoma, also the western panhandle, and we have some moderate drought that's developing in south central and southeastern Oklahoma, and some abnormally dry conditions that surround those drought areas, in danger of going into drought, again, if we don't get substantial moisture in the form of snow or rain anytime soon. Let's take a look at the Mesonet moisture totals going back to September 1st, the start of the cool growing season. It's pretty easy to see from these totals where the drought areas do lie there across southwestern and also the western panhandle, southwest Oklahoma, Harmon County and Hollis, 1.9 inches of rain over the last 3 to 4 months, and then in the western panhandle, less than 2 inches as well. Down there across south central Oklahoma, we do have an area that's less than 8 inches overall, at least in general, and in other places that are a little bit more, a little bit less. Then we have the large totals over across east central Oklahoma and scattered about across the central and northeastern parts of the state. In terms of deficits, well, those big deficits remain across southwestern Oklahoma. We do have that big area of deficit in east central up into northeast Oklahoma from 4.7 to 6.2 to 6.8 inches below normal, 5.8 inches below normal. So that's that region of abnormally dry conditions that stretches up into that area that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Then we see the deficits down across south central and southeastern Oklahoma. So a little bit of moisture this week, probably not enough to help. And we look into next week, later into next week, as we start to get into the Christmas week, we do see increased odds of abnormally dry conditions across much of the central and south central United States out into the western United States, including much of the western half of Oklahoma, where those greater increased odds of those below normal conditions do exist. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Like just about everything right now, a popular program that teaches school children where their food comes from is changing up its game plan. SUNUP videographer Ed Barron has this story.
We're here doing a virtual farm-to-you pilot. So usually our programs are in-person and interactive, and we travel to different schools across the state. And with COVID, we can't do that anymore. So we have adapted our whole program, and we are now doing a virtual option. Classrooms of students are across Oklahoma, and they're zooming in to see the virtual exhibit.
So far we've completed 3, and it's been really well received. All of the feedback that we are getting is positive. However, we can't man the camera, protect the sound, and do all those things and read the scripts and interact with the children. So it was put out there, and we asked the educators if they thought they would be willing to come to campus instead of us coming to them. So without the educators and support from their county leadership, this wouldn't be possible.
A lot of my teachers in the county, when this came out, were very excited that we still had this option for them to do. Even though we couldn't do the face-to-face activities, they were still excited because our teachers in Washington County love this program. I think it's really important for kids to know about, first of all, where their food comes from at the grocery store, that there's steps before the grocery store that it takes. And it's also really important for them to know how to make those healthy food choices when they become adults.
1 in 3 children in Oklahoma are overweight. A lot of our healthy lifestyle habits begin when we're young, and they learn everything from Oklahoma farmland and what crops are grown here and what wheat looks like, to how to make healthy choices at the grocery store and how to stay healthy and protect their muscles, bones, and brains. So it's important to get that information out, even through a pandemic.
Usually, for our program, in a calendar year, we travel to about 30 schools across the state. Right now, we are planning to reach approximately 1,300 students with this pilot, which during a pandemic, that's incredible. That's a lot. So we're really happy and very thankful for our schools. We're really just adapting and trying new things and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't. And we're just pushing the boundaries of what we can do. And it's been really successful that we have been able to reach students in the midst of this pandemic.
I miss the kids though, being here live.
Over the past few weeks, we've been talking about the possible establishment of a downtrend in price. Kim, are we seeing that yet?
I think we're very close to it. You can either call it a downtrend. I would probably call it a sideways pattern. Over the last couple weeks, yes, we got the downtrend. We got the pattern at support at 530. We got resistance at 580 on that Kansas City March contract. Our price is real close to that 530. If we break through that, then we will for sure have established a downtrend. If you want to convert that March contract over to the July 21 contract, just add about 9 or 10 cents to that. We've got Oklahoma cash prices now around $5. You know, that's significantly lower than they were a couple weeks ago. And forward contract for this next harvest delivery, about $5.30.
It's been a while since I've asked this question, but do you think there's any chance for $6 wheat?
I think there's some chance, especially as you get out in the long run. Right now, the harvest is finishing up in the southern hemisphere, Argentina, Australia. The next harvest to come online will be in March when we get India, Pakistan, North Africa, but that wheat will not be exported. The next exportable wheat to be harvested after we finish up with Argentina and Australia is the U.S. winter wheat crop. So if you're looking at $6 wheat, I think you're looking at when wheat comes out of dormancy. It's going to depend totally and completely up to weather, and probably more than likely August or September of this next year.
Now, with all of that, how are things looking in the corn market?
Well, I think the corn, if you look technically, we've broken that uptrend just slightly with the sideways pattern. We got support at $4.15, resistance at $4.40. Right now, that March contract is close to that $4.15. If we break it, then we will establish a downtrend for sure. If you look at Oklahoma cash corn prices, around $4.55. If you're forward contracting for 21 delivery or planning out that far to what you're going to plant next year, you can forward contract for about $4.20.
With winter already here and winter crops out there, the focus is on protein for livestock producers. How are things looking in the soybean market?
Well, that soybean contract is still on an uptrend. However, it looks like it's leveling out. It's been traded slightly lower for the last week and a half. You've got support at $11.40, resistance at $12. The price is not as close to that support level as it is for wheat and for corn, but it's going down there. But it looks, unless China comes in this month, we're probably going to see sideways movement in just about all our commodities.
What about the grain markets?
Well, if you look at the grain market in the short run, we're in the holiday season. You can have some erratic movements as the traders get out of positions, take profit, cover positions, or China could come in and stir things up. So it's going to be erratic this month. I think we're going to be in a weather market as we get into January, February, and March. Not much happening to wheat until wheat comes out of dormancy around the world. And if you look out into the 21 crops, I think prices look better than they've looked for the past couple of years.
Sounds good. And whenever this whole pandemic thing's over, can we still do the tailgate chats in the back of the pickups?
I'm going to keep mine if you're going to keep yours.
You got it. Dr. Kim Anderson, grain marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Today I thought I'd share a little bit of information about the invention of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was invented on May 8, 1886 by Dr. John Pemberton, a pharmacist living in Atlanta, Georgia. Pemberton had become addicted to morphine after being wounded during the Civil War and had hoped to find a substitute for the painkiller. Originally, he created an alcoholic beverage called Pemberton's French Wine Coca, which contained African cola nut. However, in 1886, Atlanta passed prohibition legislation forbidding the sale of alcoholic beverages, so Pemberton had to reformulate his wine to remove the alcohol. The result was called Coca-Cola, the temperance drink. Coca-Cola was sold initially at Jacob's Pharmacy in Atlanta for 5 cents a glass as a soda fountain drink. The carbonated water used in the product was thought to be beneficial to health, so the beverage was marketed as being a cure for numerous diseases, including morphine addiction, indigestion, nerve disorders, headaches, and many others. The company would continue to invest heavily in advertising, and in 1931, it commissioned artist Haddon Sundblom to create cheerful images of Santa Claus to use in its advertising. Santa's overall appearance and how we view him today was certainly influenced by the Coca-Cola Company. So remember to enjoy whatever beverage you prefer this holiday season. For more information, please visit sunup.okstate.edu or food.okstate.edu.
That'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can find us anytime on our website, sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.